And I know I could tell you anything. You won't judge, you just listen then. 'Cause you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. 'Cause my darling, you and I could take over the world, one step at a time, just you and I. And you're the only one who brings light just like the sun, one step at a time, just you and I.
Welcome back to Morning Coffee with your host, Rick Alexander. If you guys are interested in applying some of this information a little bit better, somewhere along the line of like 4 months ago, I sort of took a detour in my content creation career. And instead of just interviewing and just talking about fitness, I really dove deep into the psychological space and the emotional space. And the reason I did is because I was having all of this success athletically, and it wasn't fulfilling. And I was looking around and realizing that my life wasn't really what I wanted it to be. And so I realized that all of the sets and all of the reps, all of that stuff is amazing, and it can get you really far. But at the end of the day, if your head's a mess, it really doesn't matter what it is you're trying to do or how successful you are in that thing. You know, you'll end up looking around and realizing that it was kind of all for naught, because when we think about physical endeavors, when we think about professional endeavors, we think about striving in any way, shape, or form in this life. The reason we strive is because we assume that the attainment of that thing is going to make our life better. But the reality is that the thing that actually makes our life better is in the striving. It's not in the attainment. The attainment means very little. And if you place all of your emphasis on the attainment, well, then you end up on that hedonic treadmill that I talk about quite often. And so today what I wanted to do is I wanted to introduce something to you, an idea that is, well, for me, it was a little bit life-changing, and I can really go deep thinking about all of the ways that I've screwed this up in my life. And so perhaps if you're a go-getter, if you're anything like me, you might relate to this message a little bit. And the message is that as soon as you realize that there's actually nowhere to get in life, things get better. And sometimes we just have to stop and say that to ourselves. Like, there is nowhere to get, you know? It's like if you were to lay out the timeline of your life, you have a beginning and an end. At the end, you die. At the beginning, you're born. And what you do in the middle, there's no, like, right or wrong. Or, I mean, if you're not hurting other people, obviously this is within reason. But a lot of people think that their timeline looks like a mountain, and somewhere in the middle is a peak. And that just isn't true. And if you act like that, you're going to get to that peak and you're going to wonder, well, what's next? Because the reality is that there is nowhere to get, and nobody's getting out of this thing alive at all. And sometimes what happens is we allow ambition to be in the driver's seat of what we're doing. And so we look for the attainment of things simply for the sake of attaining those things. And what we need to do is put ambition in the backseat, because ambition isn't an end, it's a means. It helps get us to where we want to go. But at the end of the day, if we strive just for ambition's sake, just for the sake of attainment, getting more things, we end up kind of discontent because we realize that those things were never actually going to make us any happier. And I know that that is something that's said a lot. It's not something that even necessarily needs to be repeated, because we all understand that things and material don't necessarily make us happy. There's a depth, like a profundity to life. There's a layer deeper that we need to tap into in order to really feel content. And, you know, once you get to that layer deeper, you know, it's hard to talk about this in non-religious terms, but there's a completeness that underlies everything broken. There's a layer deeper to life that you have the ability to get into. And that happens when you stop focusing on material and you stop focusing on the things that you get, and you start focusing on the way that you make people feel, and you start focusing on the craft of the thing that you are doing. You know, a lot of times we just want to get to the end. We're like, what do I got to do to get to the promotion? So we just go check the boxes. But there's so much more enjoyment when you focus on something for the craft of that thing, and you really you allow yourself to get lost in the details. You allow yourself to get lost in the wonder of the thing that you're doing, and you allow yourself to be curious. You know, it's like all through school, we're kind of taught not to be curious, and that's sort of the system, because the system needs cogs in the machine. But at the end of the day, like, I just think our culture and definitely like my generation, the idea of doing things because there's no ability in just getting them done is sort of waning. It's not really resonating with people anymore. Like, people want to feel life. at a layer deeper. And I'm telling you, the way that you do that is you start focusing on the things that are known to be deeper. You start focusing on the relationship. You start focusing on the craft. You allow yourself to be curious. Like I said last week, you allow yourself to pursue the things that you love. Stop shoving yourself into a box that you don't fit just because the world says that that's what your life should look like. You know, because at the end of the day, I could say this to you so many times in so many different ways, but you really have to think through it yourself. There's nowhere to get. There is no, I've made it and now I'm done. And I think in Western culture, for whatever reason, we've started to make this idea very pervasive that there is somewhere to get. We act as if there's an endpoint to our lives, but the reality is the endpoint is death, and everybody's going there, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Not at this point, not at this juncture in technology, we'll say. And so really think about all of the different facets of your life and what you want those to look like. You know, I know on Friday I talked about this pragmatic approach to growth and improvement. Well, that's like the key, right? It's like figure out, what do you want your physique to look like? How do you want your physiology to manifest? And then eat in a way that's going to help promote that. Find movement patterns that are going to help promote that. What are your values? You know, like one of the things I realized that I really value is vitality. And so at the end of the day, like there's nowhere to get. There's no level of energy that I'm like, perfect, this is it, and now I'm done. It's like, no, I just have to continuously remind myself that that's a value, and I need to eat in a way and set my life up in a way so that I have vitality, so that I have energy, and so that I feel like I have the ability to grow. And so a lot of it is just figuring out, like, what do you want? What do you value? What do you want your life to look like? And then you just start doing that. Like you start acting in that way. And if there are parts of your life that aren't what you want them to be, you figure out how to get them there. But there's nowhere to get. And I think that we really need to trust in this process and realize that it all is a process. And the lessons we learn, the quality of our life, it's all going to be reflected in the process. You know, none of it's going to be reflected in the medal, the time on the podium. When I do these marathons and ultra marathons and stuff, I don't ever keep the medals. And people are like, won't you want a momentum? Like, I get why people do. But for me, I have to keep reminding myself that it's not about the medal. It's not about the finish line at all. Does it feel good? Does it look back to be like, yeah, I did that thing? For sure. But what happens with people who relish on the thing that they've done and then they forget that life is about the process, and then they try to live out like they rest on their laurels for the rest of their life. Like, think about those people and think about the quality of their life. You know, it's wild because I've had a lot of really good athletes on Lionheart Radio. And what's interesting is, you know, I've picked up on this, and obviously I don't bring it up in the show or anything, but sometimes people who found a large amount of success early on in their life, they tend to want to ride that success, and then they become this like meme or caricature of themselves almost. And you can tell that they're just hanging on to the glory days. It's like the guy that says, who talks about like high school football, and it's like, but what? You're 35, so like, what have you done since then? And I think we all have to remind ourselves that there's nowhere to get. And if you feel like you've already gotten where there was to get, you're missing the boat. There's a whole bunch of life left on the table, and you don't want to leave it on the table and not experience it simply because you didn't have an ability to let the past go. And a lot of people fall into that trap, myself included. I have to always remind myself there's nowhere to get. It's all about the process. So what do you want the process to look like? You know, nobody ever asks us that in high school or college or when we're transitioning. It's like nobody ever, even transitioning out of the military, there's all this focus they had on like, what do you want to do for a job? And this is, you have to pay these bills and do this, and you have to figure out a way to get insurance. And, you know, they focus on the technicalities of it. And I understand that, because the technicalities, if you don't get them down, they can ruin you. They can fold you. But if you want to think about it in terms of happiness and not hating your life, then you have to think about what you want your life to look like. You have to realize that it's all the middle section that we get to choose. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You never know what's going to happen after you finish. What you do know is the next step that you're about to take. That's the only thing that you're guaranteed. So take it in a direction that's going to make you happy. I love you guys. I'll talk to you later on Morning Coffee.
Your sleepy eyes when the sun pierced through, engulfed in cotton silk, satin and you, counting sheep in the afternoon. Close your eyes and I'll see you soon. Turn around, girl. Your shadow next to mine is fading away. Turn around, girl. As the sun takes takes the light, with the moon I'll stay. Turn around, girl. I feel that wisdom is on the way. Your Kool-Aid smile, I like your style. Kicking it by the beach, and I love for miles. In words we spoke, went up in smoke. Dreams of ever after, and things we said, in love we fled. Now bring such laughter. Turn around, girl. Your shadow next to mine is fading away. Turn around, girl. As the sun takes the light, with the moon I'll stay. Turn around, girl. I feel that wisdom is on the way. Take the time, you see what was so sublime. From the start to the finish, at the drop of a dime. Was it special? I hope so, because in my black book you're just another hoe. So here we go, down the same road. Every little memory flushed down the commode. Is it you, girl?